Okay, so let's jump right in. Imagine this. You just spent like hours in the library, totally buried in books and articles.
Yeah.
Your notes are like overflowing. You're feeling kind of overwhelmed.
I've been there.
Right. But what if you could just like upload all that stuff to an AI and get back a podcast-style summary that you could listen to on the go?
Okay. I like where this is going.
Yeah. Would that be amazing or kind of terrifying?
I think a little of both, honestly.
Right. Well, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today.
Oh, wow.
All about how artificial intelligence is changing higher education.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. I mean, you gave me a ton of material to work with for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've got journal articles, news articles, reports on all these new AI tools.
It's moving so fast.
I know. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So basically, we're going to try to unpack all of this
Okay.
and figure out, what are the potential benefits of this technology?
Sure.
What are the dangers? What are the ethical concerns?
Right, because there are definitely some big questions there.
Oh, absolutely. And we want to look at this from all angles.
Yeah.
What does this mean for students, for professors, for anyone who cares about the future of learning?
I think one concept that really stood out to me from all these sources was this idea of the university as a service.
Okay, so explain that to me. What does that even mean?
So it's like this pretty radical shift in how we think about universities.
Okay.
Right now they're seen as these kind of elite institutions. Right?
Yeah, the ivory tower.
Exactly. But with this university as a service model, it's like they become more like service providers.
So instead of being a place you go to, it's like a service you subscribe to.
Yeah, kind of like Spotify or Netflix, but for education.
Okay, I see what you mean. So in that model, what actually changes? I mean, would there still be professors and classes and all that?
Oh, yeah, you'd still have those core elements.
Okay.
But things like the technology, the infrastructure,
Right.
how courses are delivered, even some student support services, that could all be outsourced to other companies.
So instead of going to a physical campus, everyone would just be logging into some online platform.
Exactly. And that raises some interesting questions.
Like what?
Well, for starters, who controls knowledge in this model?
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. And what happens to things like academic freedom research, funding the role of faculty in shaping the direction of education?
Yeah. All of that stuff gets thrown into question.
Right. These sources really forced us to think about those big picture issues.
For sure. Okay, so we've been talking about this in kind of a general sense, but you also gave me some info on a specific tool that's making waves right now.
You mean NotebookLM?
Yeah, that's the one. It's a Google product, right?
It is. It actually launched back in July of 2023.
Okay, so it's still pretty new.
Yeah. Started as more of a research assistant kind of tool, but it's evolved a lot since then.
So what can it do?
Okay, so imagine you've got a PDF, a text document, an audio recording, anything like that. You upload it to NotebookLM, and it processes it, pulls out all the key information.
Okay.
And then it presents it to you in a way that's tailored to your needs.
So it's kind of like having a personal research assistant.
Exactly. It can summarize complex information, create study guides, generate questions, even make timelines.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but that's not even the coolest part.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. There's this feature called deep dive discussions, and it's like totally next level.
Okay, so I read a little bit about this. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine you upload like a super dense academic paper, something that would normally take you hours to read and digest.
And it's probably filled with jargon I don't understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But instead of struggling through it, you get back a podcast-style discussion.
Wait, so it's like a podcast with AI hosts talking about the paper?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It's like having a couple of study buddies who are experts on the topic.
Okay, so they just like break it down and explain everything?
Yeah, they unpack the ideas, give you examples, discuss the implications. It's like they're having a casual conversation about it.
That sounds amazing, but how does it actually work? I mean, is it really creating a podcast?
It really is. It uses natural language processing and speech synthesis to create this whole conversation based on the material you upload.
Wow, that's wild.
They're pretty mind-blowing, and it can even adapt the tone and style of the discussion based on your preferences.
So if I wanted something more formal or more casual, I could choose that.
Exactly. And here's another cool thing. It can accept input in 35 different languages.
Seriously, 35?
Yeah. But the output, the podcast itself, is only in English for now.
Oh, okay. So there are some limitations still.
Yeah, but it's still pretty incredible. I mean, this could be a game changer for students, especially those who struggle with traditional learning methods like reading.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a much better listener than a reader, so something like this would be awesome for me.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And think about people who are learning in a language that's not their native tongue,
Oh, yeah. That would be super helpful.
right? It can make complex academic content so much more accessible.
Okay, but hold on a second. As cool as this all sounds, isn't there a risk that we become too reliant on these AI summaries?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of these sources brought up.
Yeah.
Like, what happens to critical thinking skills if we're just passively absorbing information?
Right. Are we losing the ability to engage with difficult texts and form our own interpretations?
Exactly. And that's a crucial part of learning.
It is.
Mm.
And then there's the whole issue of plagiarism.
Oh, yeah. If NotebookLM can generate original content, how do we know who actually wrote it?
What's stopping someone from just submitting a deep dive discussion as their own work?
These are really tricky ethical questions.
They are, and we also have to think about the accuracy of these summaries.
Right.
I mean, can we really trust that the AI is always getting it right, especially if it's dealing with complex or nuanced arguments?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And then there's the issue of bias.
Oh, right, because any AI is only as good as the data it's trained on.
Exactly. So if the data is biased, the AI's output will be biased too.
So we have to be really careful about how we use these tools.
Absolutely. It's like with any powerful technology, we need to use it responsibly and ethically.
Especially when it comes to something as important as education.
I completely agree. The stakes are really high here.
They are. So the question isn't whether AI will play a role in higher education. I mean, it already is.
Yeah,
The question is, how do we shape that role?
right.
How do we make sure that it's benefiting students and educators and not undermining the core values of education itself?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something we'll be exploring further in this deep dive.
Absolutely. There's so much more to unpack here.
There really is.
But for now, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to continue our discussion.
It's kind of wild to think about how fast all this is happening.
It really is.
Like AI has gone from being this sci-fi concept to something that's actually impacting our lives, especially in education.
I know, it's moving at warp speed.
And as we dig deeper into this idea of the university as a service, it's kind of scary to think about the potential consequences. Yeah. What happens to the role of the university in research, for example?
Right. I mean, if their main focus becomes providing services and data to tech companies, what happens to the pursuit of new knowledge?
Exactly. And what about academic freedom?
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one.
If universities become dependent on these third-party platforms and services, could that compromise the independence of faculty?
I mean, will professors still be able to pursue research that might be critical of these companies?
That's a really valid concern.
It is, and it kind of feels like we're heading towards this slippery slope where corporate interests start dictating what gets studied and taught.
I see what you mean. Like, will the priorities of tech companies
Oh.
align with the goals of higher education?
Exactly. Or will we see a shift towards this more commercialized approach where the focus is on profit rather than, critical thinking and intellectual curiosity?
That's a scary thought.
It is, and I think it's super important for everyone to be aware of this, students, faculty, policymakers.
Absolutely. We need to be advocating for policies that protect the integrity of higher education.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, so let's circle back to NotebookLM for a minute. You mentioned earlier that it can handle input in 35 different languages,
That's right.
which is pretty amazing, especially in today's globalized world,
Yeah, it really highlights the potential for AI to break down language barriers.
and make knowledge more accessible to a wider audience.
If you imagine a student in rural India being able to understand a complex scientific paper written in English.
Or a researcher in Brazil who can synthesize findings from studies in multiple languages.
It could really revolutionize the way we share and collaborate on knowledge.
Okay, but how does it actually handle all these different languages? I mean, is it just translating the text?
It's more sophisticated than that.
Okay, so tell me more.
So NotebookLM is built on this super powerful language model that's trained on a massive amount of data,
Okay,
text and code in multiple languages.
gotcha.
This allows it to understand the nuances of different languages and to generate summaries and discussions that are both accurate and culturally relevant.
So it's not just spitting out a word-for-word translation, it's actually processing the information and presenting it in a way that makes sense in the target language.
Exactly. It's able to capture the meaning and the intent behind the words.
Wow, that's really impressive.
It is.
This makes me think about those deep dive discussions again. You said they're currently only available in English, right?
Yeah, for now.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, generating natural-sounding speech in multiple languages is a really complex task.
Oh, I bet.
It's one of the areas where AI is still evolving rapidly.
So maybe we'll see deep dive discussions in other languages sometime soon.
Oh, I think it's definitely on the horizon.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious, how are these deep dive discussions actually created? It seems like there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah, it's a pretty intricate process.
Break it down for me.
Okay, so first, NotebookLM's language model analyzes the text that you upload.
Okay.
It identifies the key concepts, the arguments, the supporting evidence, all of that. Then it uses that information to create a dialogue.
So it's like the AI is writing a script for a podcast episode.
Sort of, but it's not just a simple script.
Okay, how so?
The AI is also using its knowledge of human conversation to make the dialogue flow naturally.
Like with pauses and interjections and stuff?
Exactly. It even throws in a little bit of humor sometimes.
So it's really trying to mimic how humans talk and discuss ideas.
Precisely. And that's what makes the deep dive discussion so engaging. It's like you're listening to a real conversation.
It's like eavesdropping on a discussion between two experts.
I like that analogy.
And it's such a cool example of how AI can make complex information more accessible.
It really is.
Okay, so earlier we talked about how AI can personalize learning experiences. How does that work with NotebookLM?
Well, it's definitely more than just customizing the format of the output.
Okay, so what else can it do?
NotebookLM actually adapts to your learning style and preferences.
So how does it know what my preferences are?
You can tell it, like if you're a visual learner, you can ask it to generate mind maps or concept diagrams.
That's neat.
Or if you're an auditory learner, you can adjust the speed and tone of the AI voices.
So it's like having a personal tutor who can tailor their teaching methods to your needs.
Exactly. And as AI technology continues to evolve, I think we'll see even more sophisticated personalization in the future.
Like what?
Imagine an AI tutor that can adjust the pace and difficulty of the material based on your understanding.
That's wild. It's
Yeah.
like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It is, but it could become a reality sooner than we think.
And that brings us to another big question. What happens to the role of the human teacher in all of this?
Right. Will AI eventually replace teachers altogether?
Or will it just change the nature of teaching?
That's a tough question, and I don't think there's a simple answer.
I agree, but I do think it's important to remember that teaching is about more than just conveying information.
Absolutely.
It's about inspiring students, fostering their curiosity, helping them develop critical thinking skills.
And those are things that AI, at least in its current form, can't really replicate.
Right, so maybe the most likely scenario is that AI and human teachers will work together.
I think that's the most optimistic outcome.
Yeah, where each leverages their unique strengths to create a more effective learning experience.
It's about finding that balance between the power of AI and the human touch.
That's a good way to put it. You know, one thing that really struck me while I was reading through all this material was the sheer range of applications for NotebookLM.
Oh yeah, it goes way beyond just education.
I mean, we've talked about how it can help students and researchers, but it seems like it could be useful for anyone who needs to process complex information.
Absolutely. Think about professionals in fields like law, medicine, finance.
Oh yeah, they're constantly having to stay up to date on the latest research.
Exactly. And NotebookLM could help them do that more efficiently.
It's like having a personalized research team at your fingertips.
I like that analogy.
Imagine a lawyer who can upload a stack of legal documents and get a concise summary of the key arguments.
Or a doctor who can instantly research the latest treatment options for a patient.
The possibilities are endless.
They really are, and we're just scratching the surface of what AI can do.
It's exciting, but also a little bit scary.
I know, it's a lot to process.
It is, with all this power at our disposal. We really need to think about how to use it wisely.
Couldn't agree more. We need to approach AI with both a sense of wonder and a healthy dose of skepticism.
And we need to be asking ourselves not just what it can do, but what we want it to do.
Exactly. We need to make sure that AI is being used for good.
Okay, so before we move on, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier. NotebookLM is currently free to use.
It is.
But you also mentioned there's a paid version called Plus with more advanced features.
Right.
So this raises some questions about equity and access.
It does.
What happens if the best features of NotebookLM are only available to those who can afford to pay?
Yeah, could it create a two-tiered system of education where wealthier students have an unfair advantage?
That's a valid concern, and it highlights the importance of addressing these digital equity issues.
Absolutely. As AI becomes more integrated into education, we need to make sure that all students have access to the tools they need.
regardless of their background.
Exactly. We can't let technology widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
We need to use it to create a more equitable education system for everyone.
I couldn't agree more.
You know, it's mind-blowing to think about how much is changing so fast.
I know.
It's not just higher ed, it's everything.
It really is.
How we learn, how we work, how we interact with the world.
It's like AI is this force that's reshaping everything.
Totally. And as we're kind of standing here on the edge of this new frontier, it's both exciting and a little scary, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like uncharted territory.
Totally. And I keep coming back to this idea that AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
It all depends on how we use it.
Exactly. So the big question is, how do we harness this power of AI in a way that benefits everyone?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
It really is. You know, what the sources you gave me this report on generative AI.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It argues that AI has the potential to democratize knowledge.
Right. Make learning more personalized and accessible.
So that everyone, regardless of their background or location, could have access to high-quality educational resources.
That's the dream, isn't it?
It is, and it's not impossible.
Not with tools like NotebookLM. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
We could break down barriers of language, culture, geography,
We could create this global learning community.
where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential.
It's pretty amazing to think about.
It is.
But there's another side to this coin too, right?
What do you mean?
Well, another source you shared this book called Building a Second Brain.
Oh, yeah, I love that book.
It makes a really interesting point that while AI can be this awesome tool for learning, we shouldn't become too reliant on it.
Like, we can't let it replace our own cognitive processes.
Exactly. The author talks about how we need to develop these strong second brains.
Right, external systems for capturing, organizing, and synthesizing information.
Because there's just so much data out there.
Information overload.
Exactly. So it's not about replacing our brains with AI.
No, it's about augmenting our abilities.
Right, finding that balance.
Between leveraging the power of AI and cultivating our own critical thinking skills.
Some people even use the term centaurs
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
to describe this hybrid approach to learning and working.
Where we combine the strengths of human intelligence with the power of AI.
It's a cool analogy, right?
It perfectly captures this new era of collaboration between humans and machines.
So we need to become centaurs.
Embracing the possibilities of AI, but also recognizing the importance of our own unique capabilities.
And this brings me to a question that's been bugging me this whole time.
What's that?
What does all this mean for the future of universities?
Yeah, like, will they even exist in 10, 20 years?
I mean, if knowledge is so readily available and personalized learning is just a few clicks away, what's the point of going to a traditional university?
It's a question that a lot of people are asking.
And there's no easy answer.
Some experts think that traditional universities are becoming obsolete.
It's like they're going the way of the dinosaurs.
But others argue that they'll just have to adapt.
Embrace new technologies and teaching methods.
But also hold on to those core values?
Critical thinking, creativity, ethical reasoning.
All that good stuff.
So it's not necessarily about survival.
It's about evolution.
Universities have always had to adapt to changing times,
That's true.
and I think they'll find a way to do it again.
They've been around for centuries for a reason.
Exactly. So maybe we'll see a shift away from these big centralized institutions,
Right towards a more decentralized, personalized approach to learning.
where universities become hubs for research and innovation.
And provide access to a wider range of online and hybrid learning experiences.
It's an interesting model to think about.
It is, and it opens up so many possibilities.
Like, imagine learning being integrated into every aspect of our lives.
With AI serving as this constant companion guiding us along the way.
That's a powerful vision, but it also makes me wonder about the role of the human teacher in all of this.
Yeah, where do they fit in? If AI can personalize learning grade assignments, provide feedback,
It's a valid question.
and it's understandable for teachers to feel a little anxious about it.
But I think the most likely outcome is that AI and human teachers will find a way to work together.
Like a partnership.
Exactly, where each leverages their own strength to create a better learning experience.
AI can handle those repetitive tasks, like grading,
And teachers can focus on the things that humans do best,
inspiring students, fostering creativity.
helping them develop those critical thinking skills that are so essential in today's world.
It's the best of both worlds.
It really is, and it just shows how important it is for everyone to be adaptable.
To embrace lifelong learning,
Not just for students, but for teachers too.
we need to be open to new technologies and find ways to use them effectively.
Because the world is changing so fast, and the skills that are in demand today might not be the skills that are needed tomorrow.
That's so true.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways here?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that AI is here to stay,
It's not going anywhere.
and its impact on education is only going to grow.
So whether you're a student, an educator, or just someone who's interested in this stuff,
You need to be part of the conversation
we need to think critically about how to harness the power of AI.
and make sure it's being used for good.
Because it's not enough to just sit back and watch this all unfold.
We need to be active participants in shaping the future.
And making conscious choices about how we want to use this technology.
It's up to us to decide what kind of world we want to create.
Well said. So thanks for joining me on this journey into the world of AI and higher education.
My pleasure.
I hope this has given everyone some food for thought,
And some inspiration to keep exploring this fascinating field.
because the future is out there, and it's being shaped by the choices we make today.
So let's make sure we're making the right ones.